I have no idea what I'm going to talk about, and I feel nervous, so I'm meant to be here. I appear to be playing with a false premise that didn't look false, and I don't think I've got all the information around it. I like life to just come to me, and it does, and it's brilliant, and I have such a good time. I don't really plan for anything. I just fill up, and the next great thing comes. I don't advertise in my business. I don't have a website or a professional Facebook page, but I'm in about 14 countries, a 6-figure business, blah, blah, blah. And it's lots of fun. People just come, and everything just comes. And normally when something appears, I say yes to it pretty quickly, because I don't really care how it'll go. It's just fun to play, you know? And I've been kind of summoned. It looks like I'm being summoned out into the world a wee bit. And whereas normally I'd move very fast, I'm going slow.
First, let us just remind you that any summoning is because of the pieces that you've put into your vortex and the way that they have matured. It's you summoning you. It's not somebody else assigning you something. So when you say, I'm not really planning it, what you mean is, I planned it at incremental stages. I planned it by living life. I planned it by knowing what I don't want and knowing what I do want. I planned it by doing a lot of step 1. And now I'm really good at step 3. And so as I follow my bliss, as I follow my blissful impulses, then I find myself surprised and delighted by so many things that satisfy me. And isn't that just the best way to live? Yes. Yes.
So the lie that I'm telling myself is that I'm not having something to do with it.
Yes, it's not a lie, it's just a misunderstanding, because most people don't realize that they've been asking and asking and asking, and the reason that most people don't realize it is because they've been asking and asking and asking and resisting without knowing it, so they put so much time between the time that they ask and the time that they receive that they're not relating it to themselves. Don't you think that's funny? And can you feel how invigorating it is to get your hands around this deliberate creation thing, where you are deliberately asking and deliberately aware and deliberately minding your own vibration and deliberately minding your gap and deliberately paying attention to the way you feel, so that as impulses come, you are able to make the correlation between the part that you played in it and the universe's response to it? That is where a feeling of true worthiness and empowerment comes from. If you're just blundering into living happily ever after, you think it's luck or chance or someone else is doing it. But when you make the correlation between the thoughts that you deliberately have been thinking and the emotions that you have deliberately been reaching for and the ideas that you have consciously been aware of as you're in the receiving mode, now that's that sweet spot that we're talking about. Yeah.
It feels a wee bit arrogant or cocky to put myself out there. It feels so much more fun to just appear to be summoned.
Well, play it any way you want. Really, because there is so much that is in your vortex that you couldn't identify it because you put it in there so incrementally. And so when you get in the receiving mode and the idea occurs, if you want to pretend that it just started just now and run with it, there certainly is nothing wrong with that. We just want you to know that the journey has been a long one. You see, the reason that we want to say to anyone, oh, there's way more to the journey than you are acknowledging, is because we want them to feel the sureness that once they get the idea that it is a done deal, that it is a slam dunk, that it can be. But with someone like you who already knows that you get into that flow and off it goes, then maybe the rest of that story isn't essential to you because you're already in the receiving mode and blissfully allowing the things that you want to reveal themselves to you. And there's something else very powerful that we can feel within you, and that is you adore the element of surprise. You like so much for the universe to surprise you because you like to be in your cognitive awareness. You like to be tuned in. You really like that feeling of good timing. And something about making it sound like you planned it sort of takes that away from you, but it doesn't need to.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Really good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Really, really good. Second row.
So I want to talk a little bit about when we are in our source energy self, when I'm in my source energy self. This is my second time in the hot seat. One of my favorite stories from when I was in it before was being so close to Esther's body. And I would say that I could almost feel like she wasn't there. I could put my hand right through her. That I was just so aware of that vibration of Abraham.
Yeah.
So that I went away and I started doing that myself, trying to get myself into that place where my physical body would just melt away.
Or become less significant because of the dominance of the non-physical energy. Doesn't disappear. It's sort of like when you're watching a movie and they blur the background in order to highlight the foreground. It's like that. Your consciousness just sort of blurs what's less significant while it brings into focus what is more significant.
Okay. Healer, massage, Reiki, polarity, bunch of stuff.
That's why seeing energy is natural to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when I take my students, my clients, on a guided visualization, where in the visualization I'm saying, imagine yourself, imagine, imagine, imagine. And what I've really come to, I don't want to manipulate them, I don't want to force them. So
you aren't. What's really happening, in the same way of these things that you've already described already, what's happening is you're taking yourself on that vision in order to let their physicality fade in the background while you bring their energy body forward for yourself. This is a story for you, not for them.
Yeah. Okay, that's what I was wondering. I get there first, and then I invite them to join me.
And they might,
Okay.
but whether they do or not, you have accomplished what you are wanting and needing to accomplish in order to see them as your broader perspective sees them. This is you telling yourself the story that lets you see them through the eyes of Source. Because most healers in the Western world especially are looking at them as they are, which leads them nowhere. But as you guide yourself to see them as they really are, then you can guide them to where they really are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Makes perfect sense to you, doesn't it?
Yes. And I guess that's it.
Yeah. And it was really good.
Thank you.
Really good. Yeah.
I had a great day yesterday. My wife and I, my lovely wife and I, we traveled down from Maine to be here.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about dogs. And the wonderful experience I had last night in relation to my new feeling of wanting to get a dog for myself, because part of the...
Now, before you go further, give us more description of how that idea felt when it came. In other words, there you were, all tuned in, tapped in, turned on, in the receiving mode, and then the idea came. Give us more about that.
About the dog.
About the feeling. About the feeling and about your feeling of exhilaration about it.
The feeling of the dog was, that would be so fantastic for me to have that experience, and it came from listening to one of your recordings about dogs being pure source energy and unconditional love personified.
Yeah.
And I wanted that in my life for once.
Dun, dun, dun.
I didn't mean to go downhill with that.
Well, we're just teasing you a little bit in that we just had a conversation about unconditional alignment, and this sounds a little conditional, but there isn't anything wrong. That's why we wanted to have a conversation about, was it the receiving mode? Were you tuned in, tapped in, turned on, and the idea of something that would keep carrying that feeling on? Is that where it came from? Or are you tired of not feeling that way, and so you're in the receiving mode of something that can drag you out of the doldrums finally? Now, we're exaggerating, but was it more like this, or was it more like this?
That's a very good question.
Yeah. All of our questions are very
Yes.
good.
At the time, it was probably more like this.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, the more it feels like it's coming
Well, the more
up
you
here.
think about it, the more you want it to have been this. But which was it? In other words, if you're looking for somebody to bail you out of negative emotion,
Yeah.
then you're going to take yourself with you, and you're going to find the only dog on the planet who has a bad attitude.
Very good. I see that.
He's going to come from some shelter, and he's going to have been abused, and he's going to be afraid of you, and he's going to say, show me that you're going to be nice to me, because I don't believe it yet. And you're going to say, yeah, well, I feel the same way about you.
Okay. I understand what you're saying.
We are really enjoying having this conversation because everyone gets it, don't you? When you get an impulse or an inspiration to do something, a feeling that you want to do something, you're always in some receiving mode. In other words, when you're ornery, you're in a receiving mode. Right. And when you're depressed, you're in a receiving mode. And when you're in exhilaration, you're in a receiving mode. And so it always feels like a good idea from where you are. But as it plays out, we really don't encourage taking action that is that involved in your life experience. Like, don't pick a mate, and don't move to another country, and don't even bring a furry friend into your home unless you're sure that you're in this receiving mode. Because trying to compensate for the way you feel, you just bring yourself to the equation, and usually it ends up just amplifying where you are.
Very good. I appreciate
really good
that.
Conversation. Something more?
Only just that I would like to share real briefly. Yesterday, in following up on my good day, I was in bed last night and I was meditating with one of your meditations and doing okay with it, and my thoughts still wander, but that's understandable. At the end of the second one, all of a sudden, dogs just burst into my mind. And I had a book with me that my daughter gave me, and it was about your dog is your mirror. So I've been pondering that.
So we were just talking about, isn't it?
Yes, it's exactly what we were talking about.
And so you were having a premonition of this conversation.
I guess I was.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking of that last night.
Yeah.
But what I ended up with is just a one-sentence quote I'd like to read, because it was astounding, and it just felt so good. Every action, this is just talking about the dog, every action is emotional, and all emotion begins with attraction. Ooh, don't do that. A non-cognitive physiological pull towards something an animal desires, simply because the feeling of wanting that object makes the animal feel good. It just said to me, this man knows something about the law of attraction, and it sounds like he's been listening to Abraham.
For sure he knows. But think about the most important part of that statement. The dog is in the receiving mode.
Right.
Yeah, in this receiving mode. And so read it again? Never mind.
Right. Says the same thing that you say. Everything that the dog wants is in response to the fact that it knows.
He knows he will feel better in the having of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's what I went to sleep on last night.
Yeah.
And it was great.
Well, spend a little time acknowledging what we've talked about here. We can feel that you are in a place of understanding. And if that impulse continues to persist from your place of being certain where you are, then it's a good idea to follow through with the inspired action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Thank you.